So we all have our roles. I sit on this side, Mike sits on this side, you sit on that side, and you take care of patients and we take care of our stuff here. What happens when one of us is the patient? On this episode, we talked to Mike Spies, who recently was a patient and had a travel nurse as his nurse.
Yes.
Atlas All Access starts now. All right, Mike Spies, welcome back.
Hey, good to be back, Rich.
I'm especially happy that you're back here sitting with me right now, especially after the text messages and emails that I got over the weekend. Talk me through what happened.
Well, short version, Friday night at 11:30, my gallbladder decided that it no longer wanted to exist with me, and it was an incredible amount of pain. The thing was, my daughter was graduating college on Saturday, and it was important. This was my youngest, and it was important for me to be there at graduation. And I'd had gallbladder attacks before, and they usually pass in 5 or 6 hours, so I waited it out. And it was the worst attack ever, and it wasn't getting better, and it was obvious that I needed to go in. So at 5:30 in the morning, I went to my local hospital, to the ER, and told them, ouch. And they did what they needed to do.
Is that exactly what you told him when you went in? He's just, ouch.
There might have been a few colorful metaphors, but I was a good patient. I happened to know the doctor who was taking care of me, and one of the nurses that was there. They were great.
And we'll get to that a little bit, because you had mentioned that to me when we talked on Tuesday, that you were a good patient and exactly what that means. But as you probably were in one of your most vulnerable times ever, right?
Yeah.
You had a travel nurse taking care of you.
Once I hit the floor. So ER, for you nurses, I mean, you're all familiar with what they did with me. I mean, they did the test, did the ultrasound, said, yeah, you're full of stones. It looks nasty. So it was Saturday. So, we had to get an OR crew going. I had to get the surgeon involved. So they did a 24-hour admit and sent me up to the floor. And the young lady, the nurse that walked in, very engaging. I was obviously in a lot of pain, and I had not taken any pain medicine. I don't do that well. And my wife was with me. And she immediately came in, and she goes, hi, I'm Stephanie. And she looked at me, and she goes, you have the most amazing blue eyes. And I thought, all right, we'll get along fine. And, she started her H&P, and she goes, so Mike, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm actually a client manager with Atlas MedStaff. We do travel nurses. And I said, we actually have a couple of travel nurses in this hospital. And she just got all bright, and she goes, I'm a travel nurse. And it was just really cool that we hit on that relationship, because, she was doing this fantastic job. Here I am as a patient. And now all of a sudden, she's still doing, and she was actually very sensitive to the fact, because I was willing to talk about what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I was willing to talk about that. Of course, she wanted to get done. She wanted to make sure I was taken care of. But, it was like, is it okay if we talk about things? I'm like, yes.
She's not traveling with us.
No, she's not traveling with us. She's traveling with a very large company, and she's on her third travel assignment, and she's extremely happy with. She's had the same recruiter. She's very happy with her recruiter, and she's very happy with her company. And so we were able to talk about that. I hadn't had my the surgeon hasn't been up yet to do my consult, and the doctor who was on call hadn't been up yet to talk to me about my medical history and stuff. So we talked. One thing she brought up, she goes, well, I'm very happy with my recruiter and very happy with my company. And I said, then you found what you're looking for. I didn't immediately jump in, oh, you need to come work for Atlas MedStaff. That's not what we're about, and it's not what I'm about. This is a travel nurse who has a great recruiter. She's very happy with her company. Then what am I going to offer her? The only thing, what came up was the fact that her company doesn't have all the jobs. None of us do.
No, right. As much as we like to think, whatever,
Yeah.
there may be one or two of the very, very largest that may have all the jobs. Maybe, I don't know. But
So the one thing we did talk about is the fact that if you have a comfortable enough relationship with your recruiter, and I know that our recruiters will do this, and Atlas is a company, like if we have a job that your company doesn't have, go ahead and reach out to us or reach out to another company that may have that job. If your company can't get it. And maybe it is a situation where you work with a couple of companies. And like with Atlas, if we have a nurse that's working for us and we can't get that job and you want to go work in another company, we'll help with your compliance profile and everything else to get you moving.
I think that's the conversations I've had just recently with other travel nurses that work for other companies or whatever is, talk to me about that non-compete thing. Talk to me, what if I want to leave? What if I want to just talk to another company, and then I take a job with that other company, whether it's us or whoever it is, right? Does my compliance file follow me? And most of the time the answer is no. Sometimes.
Right, exactly. And actually to segue to compliance, that's the piece. So you'll see a lot of things on social media, and even our own nurses will say, the compliance part is the part that I just, I don't look forward to. That's the worst part of travel nursing. And so, asking her, it's like, what do you like about this? Is your third assignment? What do you like about traveling? What do you dislike? She goes, the compliance component. Why do I have to do skills checklist all the time? Why do I have to do this all the time? So me being a client manager, and that's the part I deal with because I present the nurse to the hospital. So she had an opportunity to be in front of not a recruiter, but somebody who the only way I know you nurses is by your profile. You talk to your recruiter talks to me. And so those skills checklist, everything that's on that profile, I know what my hospital, what my account needs in a nurse. And the only way that I know you is by looking and going through this stack of papers that I have in front of me. So when I talk to her about the skills checklist and why I need to do this, not only it's also a joint commission thing for us,
sure,
but and that kind of made sense to her, and then we talked about the component of, here I am, a patient now, in a lot of pain, very vulnerable, and this nurse was fantastic. Stephanie, you were fantastic. And I told her that. In fact, it was the end of Nurses Week, and but I said, I look at paper, and I say, all right, would I want this nurse taking care of my family member if I was in the hospital, or myself? And I even told Stephanie, I said, that's one of the criteria I look at when I look at your skills checklist and everything else. And I said, Stephanie, you absolutely are in the right place doing the thing that you were meant to do. You are very compassionate. You take charge of the situation. You're making sure that I'm taken care of. And, I lose that human component because I'm not talking to the nurses. I'm talking to the hospital.
After a while, everybody does, right? And I think it almost maybe happens on the nurse side too. You lose that human component on our side too, right? Coming back to your recruiter or the client manager or the compliance person or the payroll person or whatever, because we get so caught up in our daily lives and the roles that we play, and our routine, in addition to everything else we do, family and, life outside of these walls here or your walls at the hospital or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you because it not only it reconnected me a little bit, just living through what you just experienced, but then I think it reconnected you in a lot of ways too.
Well, it was not only with Stephanie, but I do want to touch upon my daughter's graduation and that piece of it, because this was so. I'd gone through all my consults and I set up the surgical time and done everything, and the surgical crew comes up to get me, and my wife was with me, and she was able to live stream the graduation from college, and they're wheeling me down the hall towards the OR. My wife's behind me. It's like, all right, they're on the L's. My last name is Spies, so we're going down, and the nurses are pushing me along, and we get down to the OR, and we pass the room where my wife needed to go into, and they say, no, you just come on back. And of course it's Saturday, so there's not a lot going on. So they take her back with me into the pre-op, and all the nurses, and it's like we're coming up to the S's, and all the nurses, my OR crew that's going to be taking care of me, the nurse anesthetist that's going to be knocking me out. They're all gathered around behind me. My wife is right there with the iPad, and I get to watch my daughter get her degree. And the girls started crying behind me. I mean, it was just, they held up the doctor, they held up surgery, they held up everything so that I could watch my daughter get her degree. And then they said, all right, Amy, you need to go out to that room we showed you. And my wife kissed me. And that is the last thing I remember until I woke up in PACU and they were taking me upstairs. But how compassionate. Mm-hmm. How, these guys get called in. They're on call. They got called in on a Saturday to come take care of a silly guy and his inflamed gallbladder. And they let me have the moment that I was going to miss. And, I mean, that's taking care of patients. And when I'm looking at that stack of paper, I can't look at that on a sheet of paper. Mm-hmm. Let patient watch his daughter take her diploma. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much more to what you guys do than what I just look at on every day, on those profiles that the recruiters send me. Submit my nurse to Yale, submit my nurse to Dartmouth, submit mm-hmm. my nurse here. All right, let me see, and I was very humbled and also very excited and re-empowered about what I do, because Stephanie's taking care of a different patient today. Mm-hmm. She took care of a different one yesterday. And I know that even though that nurse doesn't work for me, doesn't work for Atlas, man, she's gold. And I told her she'd come work for us anytime she wants to. Funny thing, a real quick fun thing too. After she did her HP and we talked before I went to surgery, she goes, I don't want to violate HIPAA or anything, but she goes, can I tell the other nurses on the floor and in the unit that you're here? I had a nurse practitioner come in and talk to me. I had nurses coming in, I was just talking to them about the travel nurse industry and what we do here at Atlas. And the cool thing is they'd heard of us. I don't live here in Omaha. I live 30 miles away, but they knew who Atlas was, and we have travelers there. They weren't working that day. I didn't get to talk to them. But, for everything I went through, it was just humbling. I wanted to be a good patient for her. She was a great nurse.
And that's the part I wanted to come back around to, was the being a good patient, right? How I'm sure they've seen their share of not great patients out there, right?
Oh yes, every day.
But right,
and family members.
But absolutely, yes. Right. And I mean, you experienced that when in previous careers when you worked in the hospital setting too.
Absolutely.
And it takes a special kind of person to be that nurse, to be that nurse practitioner, to be that whatever, to look past all of that and just do what you're there to do. And that opening line that about your blue eyes, that's so disarming. Like, no matter what, you could be the grouchiest old bastard ever.
Yep.
And that's so disarming. I would think, no matter how much pain you're in, you're like, that's the first thing she saw.
Oh, and then my wife right away, why do you got to flirt with all the ladies? She was joking, of course, but it's like first words out of her mouth, you have the most amazing blue eyes. Well, yes, thank you. Ow.
But it brought me back around to we tell the story. I talk about it here all the time, and I'm sure you guys out there are tired of hearing it, and the recruiters are tired of hearing it. It is such a personal business on the nurse side. It should be a personal business for us too. Yes, very much so. And it all comes down to is if you're a person, how you treat other people too. Mm-hmm. You can be in an amazing amount of pain, and talk about being personal. I mean, that nurse is going to get up close and as personal with you, and everything about you is, yeah, we all know, and she was just such a good person. And I wanted to be a good patient for her, and to come in and immediately introduce herself to my wife too. It wasn't just like, okay, focus right on me. My wife was sitting next to me, and, this is who I am. She's talking to me, but she's also talking to her. Mm-hmm. And that was, personal.
Yeah. And it was fun afterwards because I was ready to go home. She was my nurse when I came back up to the room, and I got dismissed the same day, but, I had to get to a point where I was safe to leave. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, I'm ready to go. And she goes, she's letting me think I'm negotiating what time I'm going to come home. She goes, well, maybe 4-ish. And I'm like, maybe 3-ish. She goes like, maybe 4-ish. I'm like, maybe 3:30-ish. And it was just, we just had a nice banter, but she was also very cognitive of, Mike, how's your pain? What do you need? And I was like, I was feeling so much better having that gallbladder out. It was just a very nice patient-nurse relationship. When she wheeled me out, she actually wheeled me out through the ER. I came in mid-shift in the ER, so I caught the night crew, then I had the day crew. And the day crew was still there. And so I wish them a happy Nurses Week, and I thanked them for everything they did. And then that night I called the ER, 2 ER nurses were working. So that night I called them and thanked them for what they'd done for me.
I'm so glad you're all right. Like, I think that
I am too, man.
More than anything that
I would not wish that gallbladder thing on anyone, And Rich made me come back to work the next day. No, he didn't. No,
the following day.
Yeah, the following day. No, none of that at all. We don't do that here at Atlas. I'm feeling pretty good post-surgical, so just working half days right now.
I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're okay. And even more so, I'm glad that you had the experience that you did, because that's happening every day all across the country, whether it's a travel nurse or a perm nurse or whatever. Yeah. And, for us, 1 week, we all, 1 week during the year, it's yay, Nurses Week, thanks for all you do or whatever. And then I think we need to revisit this all the time, because they're doing it all the time. It's not just 1 week out of the year.
Yeah, it's easy to lose that humanity, the real reason the nurses are nurses. Mm-hmm. I mean, what they're doing, and it's really easy to lose that on where I'm at my level.
Right.
And
when you're just moving papers, you're matching profiles to jobs, right? That's every day.
Exactly. I'm taking care of that hospital, making sure that this and this, and it was just so nice to have that kick in the pants of reality from that nurse, from all the nurses that day, but especially the traveler.
Yeah.
She is the real deal.
I'm glad you're okay.
Me too. Thanks, Rich.
All right. Thanks, Mike. We'll see you next week.